Hello there, and welcome back. Since this is part 2 of this series, I recommend you watch part 1 if you haven't already for full context. With this short intro out of the way, let us continue.
Soon after.
Do you remember when Appa is captured?
Yes, he was captured by. Wasn't he captured by Zuko or somebody?
It's like a Fire Nation circus thing.
Yeah, that's it.
And so the problem with Appa is he's like, I'm gonna tame you, because you're a crazy dude. And every time he tries to like prevent Appa from getting food, Appa finds like there's like he like airbends food toward him, and this kid gave him something to eat as well. And so and then we move on to like this scene where it's clear that the guy is going to use Appa as like an attraction. And so the first confusion I had when I was watching this was like, oh my god, he's got like chains on his ankles, I guess. And I was like, oh, that must prevent him from flying, because obviously if he could fly, he'd just escape. But then I realized that his act requires him to fly through fire hoops. And I was like, oh, so why doesn't he just escape? Again, I hope I don't get flagged for copyright with this one. So the thing is like, oh, maybe it's that dude with the fire whip, and it's like, well, I mean, Appa could just fly out right now, but instead he's like sort of playing along for a moment, and then he gets singed, and he's like, ow, that hurts, and then this happens. I love
he slaps it down.
It just looks so funny. For those who can't see it, Appa hits a hoop, and the hoop just bogs the dude right on the head. And yeah, so I'm just confused, like, Appa just fly away, right? And then I was thinking to myself, like, oh, there's gonna be a reason why he can't, I guess. And he ends up, like, just booting this dude. You can check this out.
Well, Appa's awesome.
Appa is awesome. And then he just flies out. And I was like, oh, what an awful...
Doesn't need to be here anymore.
Why? Like, I just... It was, like, how stupid is that circus owner?
Before the act starts, the fire circus trainer threatens Appa with fire if he tries to escape. That is what kept him from trying to escape earlier, fear. Animals in their circus are usually forced to do things against their own volition, so they're usually whipped and threatened in order to do what the trainers and the audience want. When he sees the kid that fed him earlier, he reminds him of Aang, and that is what gives him the confidence to escape.
It was, like, how stupid does that circus owner have to be? I don't know. So, like, I thought that was dumb. And then you move on, and Appa's, like, obviously hungry, injured. He's, like, splintered by this...
tired on the road.
Thing.
Well, Aang had always been taking care of him.
No. I think this stuff is pretty good. And he's, like, he's pretty ruined at this point. He hides in, like, this little place. Check this bit out, right?
I think he's found by the Kyoshi people, right?
Well, these are some issues we're coming to, right? So first of all, I find this hilarious. She picks this off a bush, and she's like, "Huh, where'd this come from?" And look at this shot now. How didn't you see that? Seems more significant than the other.
Okay, this is another valid point, like the rock acupuncture. 2 valid criticisms so far.
Seems more significant than the other thing. Where it's like, okay, so they follow the trail naturally, and they get up to Appa, and it's like, good God, lucky that someone who knows you very well happened upon you in this area, someone who cares about you to the point that they pluck those things out of him, they feed him, they rest him up, and he's back to full health. And I was just like, wow. And then fucking Azula and the 2 girls just show up, because apparently they were keeping an eye on the fur, and they saw some, and they just went to this place. I was blown away. I was just like, what? Why is everyone just showing up?
But you can't just imagine that the people who live on an island thousands of miles away would just appear first.
They were looking for that fur, and they saw it. And like, all right.
Before people who, they arrive first before the people who are actually chasing them, whose job it is to chase them down.
Yeah.
I don't know. I forgot the.
It's established that the Kyoshi warriors already know Aang was looking for Appa, since he told Suki that before they crossed the Serpent's Pass. Also, the warriors are part of the Earth Kingdom military, so they could have been looking for Appa themselves, or they were on a mission for them. As for Azula, she also finds Appa with this trail of shedding fur, just like what she did in an earlier episode of the show. And Appa escaped from a Fire Nation circus, which is what Ty Lee used to be part of. Once Appa escaped, word would have likely spread that a flying bison escaped from the circus, and And since it's a Fire Nation circus at that, Azula and her squad will likely hear about this and follow the lead.
I mean, I'll just destroy everything they love. That's it.
So this one's a bit, if you remember how, Kitara's origin story, if you will. So, someone found out that they were, because the Southern Tribe has any waterbenders captured / killed. Let's just say killed, because they get killed on sight, apparently. But another one is born, right? Or at least there is one there. That's all. Apparently, an informant told the Fire Nation this alone. There is a waterbender in the Southern Tribe. They're like, okay, so they go there, and there's like this big fight going on. But we find out that it is Kitara is the one that's actually able to waterbend. But Kitara's mother claims to be the waterbender, and she's like, "Take me away." And the guy's like, "Nope, we're gonna kill you." And she obviously dies for her. I thought it was really strange, right? Because the Fire Nation are in a position where they want to essentially eradicate the other benders. At least that's not my assumption, because the next bender's going to be... The next avatar will be a water one, assuming the air one's dead, which I think they assume. So they're wiping out the water benders, which makes sense to me. They're wiping out the people in the Southern Tribe whenever a water bender rises or is heard about. They're like, kill it, kill it, kill it. Part that blows my mind is that, like, if we turned up, let's say me and you, we're the Grand Fire Nation Inquisitor people, and we're gonna kill that waterbender. We show up, and this person just says, "I'm totally the waterbender. You have to kill me." I'd be like, "Uh-huh. So, do me a favor and just waterbend for a little bit, just so I can confirm it. Otherwise, I'll kill your whole village, because I've been sent to kill one. There's one here. I'm not going to let someone take a bullet here, Spartacus style. We're just going to get the one, alright? And it's a very definitive system. You cannot fake waterbending." And funnily enough, I think that we could have had it be that way. Like, Kitara tries to maybe help her mother by waterbending, but she's a little bit maybe out of sight, or to a degree, and like the mother takes credit for the bending itself. Like, she does the movement. She's like, "I'm the one who was bending the whole time." It's like, and then the guy, believes it is her and kills her. The crazy part to me was just that she just says, I'm the waterbender, kill me," and he does, and they leave, when you'd think the Fire Nation would be desperately invested in making sure they eradicate any and all waterbenders, because it could be the Avatar.
Okay, she'll be back. Hopefully I can stay alive long enough.
Firstly, Katara's mother told her to find her dad, so the soldier was on a time crunch, because if he didn't kill her in time, Katara's dad would likely kill him if he gets back at the house. And the Water Tribe warriors were holding their own against the raiders, so it only does reaffirm the fact that time was of the essence, since they didn't have the forces to take the village. And if we follow your suggestion, it would be very out of character for Katara to aid in her mother's death, and it would have really dented her arc in this episode if she was even partially responsible for it.
You know how they get to the planetarium thing in that library? Like, a fox spirit is just like, "Hey, over here." And like, I get it, spirits want to help about and stuff, but like, holy shit. It really feels like a writing tool where it's like, I don't know how they get there, fucking spirit shows them. Like, okay.
Much like Suki and Azula, finding Appa, it makes narrative sense. The fox is a knowledge seeker. They are basically library aides that help library patrons, and they expect a treat in return. This isn't a convenience. Everything that is happening is completely justified in the story and lore of the show.
So, scenario. You've got your team of people who don't want the king to find out that there's a war going on. This team are now aware that this team of kids have been into their underground facility, and they're probably going to tell the king about it. So, and this is when I was watching it, I was like, well, they're earthbenders. They're just going to fill in that whole area, surely. And they do. And I was like, hey, nice. And then one of the characters is like, what about the drill? And I was like, what? And it was like, yeah, what about the drill? Let's go get if the drill's there, then it's proof that the war is happening. And the drill is still there. And I was like, whoa. So, to really get my point across, I saw the drill and I was like, oh my god, it's been weeks, and they didn't remove the Fire Nation symbol for one, put a roof on top of they put walls around it, they didn't put a roof on it so you could just see it from the castle walls. They didn't fill the space with earth, right? You could just do that quickly. Like, you could do that in a half hour if you knew that, it's a danger, which they do, because they took the precaution of fucking, like, filling in their entire holding facility and their brainwashing facility. And then finally, why didn't you just bury the drill? You can actually build an area around it once it's buried to, you know, do whatever you want. Like, because there's a theory like, oh, well, they were scavenging it, and it's like, yeah, push it down, build a area, and then go to town.
The ATLA are the secret police of the city. They're not in charge of the outer wall. That is in charge of General Sung and his battalion. At this point, metal bending hasn't even been discovered yet. With the drill being so huge, it's impossible to just completely bury it. They could really only slowly strip the drill down for parts and reverse engineer it to create their own war machines. And even if they do just put a roof over it, it is pretty suspicious in and of itself, and the king can just order the ATLA to open the roof to see what's inside. They're forced to arrest their leader, so they can't exactly say no to him. And even if they do say no, the king can just have them arrested and just order the general and his men to do it.
Yeah, he would have been.
So, like, I like all that, apart from the stupid captain. But then at the end of season 2, she's like, if you help me beat the Avatar, you can totally come home. And he's like, ooh. And then he eventually takes her up in the offer, and I was like, why would you, like, this woman... And you have Iroh in the background being like, he says that... I have a problem with the dialogue in this show. He says, it is time for you to choose good. I was like, oh, so... thuds with like, you know, you wouldn't quite argue it like that typically. I don't think as a character, instead of just being so simplistic, it's like be a good, and he's like, okay. But yeah, I suppose my issue is just that I get it, like what is being gone for here. It's the everything he wants since the beginning, but now he's questioning all of that because that's how far he's come. They make that very explicit in a lot of his dialogue. Do you remember the one where he says, "Why am I so bad at being good?"
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
He tries to help people out, and then every time he helps people out, it ends up worse.
I think he's looking at a family portrait in one episode, and he's like, I have everything I want, but it's not what I really want. Yeah. And like, for me, I'm just like, oh, they really don't let me, I feel like it's the kind of stuff we should be saying, if you know what I mean. Not the characters. Besides the point, I find it almost an impossibility that he would in any way trust Azula, because they fight, during season 2, and obviously that beginning of season 2, she's like lying to him all the time. She's horrible. She tried to kill him, and then he's like almost making friends with Katara, and then he's presented, if you kill the Avatar with me, you'll be accepted. And I'm just like, why would you ever trust her?
Because he wants to. He wants it so bad. That's a pretty.
Of course, he thinks it's on the table. The terms of his exile is that if he kills or captures the Avatar, he'll be accepted back. And he's helping execute the plan to take their enemy's capital, ending their super long war, allowing the Fire Nation to basically rule the world. This is more than what Zuko needs in order to be accepted back, which we know because it's exactly what happens. What would happen if he turns it down? He will likely lose to Azula in a fight because she's a lot more powerful firebender at this point, and he will likely lose to her. And she already has the plan to take the city in motion. And once she does, the Fire Nation will have Ba Sing Se under their control, and Zuko and Iroh will be arrested since they're wanted fugitives anyway. And resisting her will only get them to even more trouble. So Zuko's choice is pretty understandable, since it's basically either getting the right to a throne back, or getting killed or rotting in prison for the rest of his life.
I thought it was really funny that after Zuko frees Appa, he goes into like a coma. And it's because Iroh says his body, like, being an evil man, can't handle the Goodman decision he made. Now, I'm not trying to speak about psychology and how it can affect you physically, right? I'm not saying it's an impossibility. I'm strictly talking about the way that I've sort of accepted all this information. So, he's, like, incredibly stressed because he's done a thing that is just not his position to be doing typically, and so he's just like, ugh. But, I would have thought that if you're like supposed to be quote unquote a bad guy, finally choosing to do something good would give you that sense of like, I nailed it. I did a good thing. This feels great. That sort of turning. But let's say, okay, fine. It stresses him out enough that he goes into this like state. The thing for me is like, I really think we should have had that happen after the scene we sort of looked at the beginning of season 2, after His family member tries to kill him, and he was baited in by his dad to go to prison. He's like shaking when he fights her. He's like exasperated, and obviously he was about to be beaten. I feel like going into some form of a stress coma after that experience would not only be more suitable, but it could be a very physical representation of like the metamorphosis, like, you know, caterpillar into butterfly sort of thing.
Yeah.
While doing it after he frees Appa, strange to me, and I feel like they did it to put him on the shelf for an episode, because it's not until the end and that he's fixed back up to normal. Like, they didn't know what they wanted to do with him.
What was the context for him saving Appa? Was it just out of kindness?
I think he stumbles across Appa and releases him because, I guess...
That's the right thing to do? Or
yeah, I think he's hoping that it'll go back to Aang.
Because that's whatever.
To start, Zuko doesn't simply free Appa because it was the right thing to do. He tries to capture him at first, but Iroh butts in and asks this question.
Prince Zuko, it's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
Zuko couldn't have gotten the coma after Azula's first attempt to try and capture them, because for most of this season, Zuko is still very confident who he is and who he wants to be.
Who are you?
My name is Zuko, son of Ursa and Fire Lord Ozai, Prince of the Fire Nation and heir to the throne.
He still tries to capture Aang in this season, and he still desires to be heir to the throne of the Fire Nation. Here, though, he doesn't know who he wants to be, fighting what he believes is the idealized version of himself, and his internal conflict starts to show. Does he still want to follow a predetermined destiny set for him by his father, or should he choose his own? It's obvious that you've completely missed the point of the coma, because as Iroh said, it's no natural sickness, so it doesn't make sense for it to happen after the beginning of Season 2, because he is still confident in who he wants to be. The writers didn't just put him on the shelf because they didn't know what to do with Zuko in this episode. That's crap. This was supposed to demonstrate his internal conflict and set up his eventual redemption. The only reason you don't know why they did this, or why you make so many mistakes in this video, is because you're either too stupid, too disinterested, or you're just a contrarian that's trying to have the hot take. Or even a combination of the lot.
Oh yeah. So, you remember Azula turns up with her two gal pals and they're dressed in the Dai Li outfit. Is it the... No, wait. The Yamashu?
The Kyoshi?
Kyoshi, that's the one.
Yeah.
Those warriors are trusted, and of course he's like, oh, you guys can help us, and they're like, mwahaha. The, first thing the Earth King tells them, or I guess it's the Earth King, he's like, hey, they're coming up with this great plan to attack the Fire Nation during a solar eclipse where they're at their weakest. And, like, Azula just lifts up her head like, oh! I was like, oh, jeez. Like, because he's a bubbling fool character.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh.
The Earth King is an idiot.
Yeah. That's like, you know, like, I'll let him have that. The part that gets me is that, Sokka meets them, and he's, like, clearly aware, because he's obviously... current on again girlfriend is Kyoshi Warrior. He sees their outfits and he manages to not conclude in any way, shape, or form that they would have stolen it from them, meaning they are compromised, meaning Suki's potentially compromised, meaning their whole plan for the eclipse is compromised. Because she knew it as well. He doesn't put those dots together whatsoever. It blows my mind they didn't have a line for him to comment on the fact. It's like, oh, do you guys know Suki? You don't even have that. He's just like, oh, hey. And I was just like, wow.
Sokka had already left the city with Aang to take him to see his dad. He wasn't even there to meet and identify them. Later on, when Katara tries to tell the king that Zuko and Iroh are in the city, the false Kyoshi warriors fool her at a glance, and when she spends more than a couple of seconds examining them, she realizes they're imposters, but it's too late for her because Ty Lee takes her down.
Azula finds out that a faction of people in the Earth capital are against the Earth King, and so naturally she's like, let's maybe work with those guys. So her plan is, I'm going to get captured, and then I'm going to meet with their leader. And I was just like watching it like, whoa, like that's super risky. Why can't you just instead be like, hey Earth King, can I speak to your prisoners to try and find out what their plans are for blah blah blah, you know? She's a Kyoshi warrior, you can trust her. instead her plan, and I was just like, man, what if you were just imprisoned indefinitely? Because she's captured by the Dai Li.
Yeah.
And the Dai Li bring her to their leader, and then she manages to broker a deal with the leader. And I was just like, dude, careful. Like, all kinds of things could have happened as a result of that.
Well, there's no other way to talk to Long Feng. What purpose would a Kyoshi warrior have to interrogate him? He's already been arrested for his schemes against the Earth King. Why would a warrior who has no prior knowledge or history with them want to interrogate him? Even if something goes wrong for Azula, Mei and Ty Lee could just bust her out, which is something they're more than capable of doing.
In the first episode of Season 3, Aang, like, has a bit of a crisis and, tries to go off on his own, and he almost, like, drowns in the ocean because he can't quite get through it. And then he's given, like, a pep talk by Roku and the Moon Spirit, and, like, immediately after, he goes full, like, water-bending pro tsunami mode, where he's just, like, traveling through the ocean really fast. Like, fucking Aquaman stuff. And I was just like, how did you not know you could do this before? I was like, okay.
There's a Fire Nation blockade protecting the country. If Aang uses tsunami at the wrong time, he could be spotted by the fleet, and he's trying to avoid being discovered because most people think he's dead. He's gotta maintain an element of surprise until the Eclipse invasion. He's also dealing with very rough and wavy waters until it was calmed down by Yue.
Correctly.
Alright, so this one's gonna be weird. So, Team Avatar have provided a guide in Ba Sing Se called Judy, and when she fails to prevent them from getting to the upper ring party, she's taken to the lake for brainwashing, I guess. And she's replaced with another guide for them who claims to be the literal same person. And they're like, no, you're not. She's like, yes, I am. They're like, oh, it's like nice and eerie and creepy. I kind of like it. But then it gets weird because you find out that loads of women are being brainwashed into becoming Judy specifically. And like, the first time I saw that, I was like, why would you just have them be different women? Like, one of them could be Judy, one of them could be, you know, Jane. you can make a bunch. And so from there, Team Avatar are like unnerved, naturally. I think we'd all would be.
I think they would be.
2 episodes later, I think, the old Judy comes back. She like knocks on the door, and they're like, "Oh my god, old Judy!" And she's like, "No, I've always been this Judy." And they're like, and then they're like, "How is this possible? How do you switch bodies? How?" And she's just like, "Nope, I'm always Judy." And there's this weird moment, like, you could go check out the scene, people listen to this. They she just like brushes that off, and then they go, "So why are you here?" And I was like, whoa, what? No, we can't just skip over the fact that we've got this lady that switches bodies. Like, you kidding me?
They do get suspicious about this, but there's nothing they can do about it. They're told by Long Feng if they try to tell the people of Ba Sing Se about the war or do anything else out of line, they'll be kicked out of the city. If they don't know yet that the Dai Li HQ is in Lake Laogai, there's nothing they can do about it. And if you notice, the Dai Li brainwash all the women at once, likely make it easier to manage them, then send them one per household in the upper levels of the city.
That's at least now that's a meme I'm in on. That's, I'll know what's going on. I mean, this is just I can answer this myself, but I may as well throw it out there. How did Aang and Appa survive being frozen for 100 years?
Just cause.
It's just definitely just cause. Because I've had some people tell me it's like Avatar state. I was like, Appa's not in the Avatar state. Like,
how did I guess it's just? I think it's just traditional movie logic. You're trapped in ice, you can live forever. It's just the matter of you getting thawed out. Because Captain America went through the same thing. He said young, he was frozen in ice.
Yeah, well, because I probably levy the same criticism against the MCU for that one. It's kind of just like. You don't... in the same way, right? Because you can get away with that, quote-unquote. But principally, you shouldn't get away with it. And what I mean by that is, like, we have a character who's ejected into space, and he's floating around out there, and then someone grabs him one day and brings him back down, and he's a character again. Be like, how the hell did he survive? You're like, oh, you know...
Space is different.
No, because we accept space is death, like, in movies. Or you die in space. Unless you're, like... I guess in like a parody kind of thing, you can survive. You know, like that sort of inverting rules on purpose. But
if you're watching Jimmy Neutron and you can literally breathe in space, you'd be good to go.
But like you have like I think Batman and Robin, they freeze people and then they're like they have to be thawed within 10 minutes, otherwise they won't be fine. And you're like, I don't think that's how that works. Like, okay.
He survived because he used the Avatar state, which amplified his airbending, freezing the water immediately, like in sci-fi franchises like Halo or Aliens, and they're placed in cryogenic chambers, causing them to experience suspended animation. If this was a long, drawn-out process, he would have likely died of hypothermia, some other cold-related illness, but since this happens instantaneously, there's nothing really questioned. And why are you using Batman and Robin, of all things? That movie's more of a comedy than anything else. A movie with inaccuracies like Mr. Freeze smoking despite his biological condition. Sounds like to me you're grasping at straws.
Ancient waterbending technique. Whatever happened, whatever reason, that's what ended up happening.
So here's a question. How did the Fire Nation attack and destroy all of the air nomads in their air temples when you can only access them through flight?
Aang actually asked that question. He's like, in the first few episodes, there's no way that they conquered the air temples because you have to get to there by flight, and then they get over there and they're all conquered. So I guess maybe they burrowed underneath somehow, or maybe it don't really answer that question. You just figure out that they did. You know that they did, but you don't know how.
There's some stuff to work with. Being first and foremost, they did attack them during Sozin's comet passing, and we know that Ozai can fly while Sozin's comet is passing.
Yeah,
So
and I think Azula can fly on her own normally, just with jet boots.
Can she?
Jet boots technique. Yeah, she has a jet boots technique where she can put fire underneath her feet. That's how she was able to survive a fall, I think.
Huh. Jesus, she's OP. Well, yeah, cool. I mean, because I know that Kitara almost kind of sort of uses a flight type thing at the end of season 2. She just needs a large body of water, I think.
But aren't the air temples on a mountain? It could have been so.
Well, this was the
could...
thing. I was gonna say, let's say, because not all the Fire Nation can fly. We know that because like Sokka's plan in the finale relies on that. If some of them got up there, I'm not like the air people. They're pretty good at their jobs, right? They'd be able to, because I feel like air would be a really good counter to fire. Blast a flame at you, and you just bloop it back, and you can use. I don't know. It is interesting to me. I am curious, and then of course the whole nomads part of it. I don't know. I wouldn't have called them nomads.
I don't think they're nomads anymore. I think they might have been nomads at one time. Maybe they're traditionally called nomads, but they're clearly not nomads in the show anymore.
That's what I mean. Just don't call them nomads. That's all. Call them air bugs. Maybe that's too on the nose. I don't know.
Remember, back then they had dragons. They could have used them to fly their way back up to the temples. And we see non-airbenders get their way up to the temples before. Like in the Northern Air Temple episode, the one that you said should be cut, we see Fire Nation soldiers march their way up there. In the Eastern Air Temple, the Guru is seen living there, and he's not an airbender. In the Western Air Temple, both Shell and Combustion Man managed to get their way up there as well, so there are many ways the Firebenders could have reached the temples without flying. As for why the Airbenders are called nomads, we see they use bisons to travel, and we saw that Aang had friends all over the world, so they likely did a lot of extensive traveling. Just because they have homes, it doesn't mean they aren't nomads. And this is not important to the story, since all of them except Aang are dead. Exploring why they're nomads is up to expanded material, not the main story itself.
Would Iroh heat up his tea with his firebending when surrounded by refugees from the Fire Nation's war? Like, Zuko calls him out for it, but I was just like, damn, Iroh's supposed to be like one of the smartest characters in the whole show. Why the hell did he do that?
Well, he's wise.
This is a character flaw, not a writing flaw. There's a difference. It's established Iroh does things without thinking them through, like when it comes to the things he's obsessed with. Like when he changes the course of the ship without Zuko's permission just to go to the market to replace a lotus tile. And early in season 2, he finds a herb that either makes delicious tea or is a very deadly poisonous plant. You could probably guess which one it was. All Iroh does is put his hand at the bottom of the cup and heat it. That's not inherently suspicious. The person that does find it sus is Jet, and he's a paranoid psychopath. Not even his friends believe him that Iroh and Zuko are firebenders. You would have a point if he did open flames in front of the crowd, but he doesn't. This is not an issue at all.
More of a dissatisfaction one as well, but Sokka spends that whole episode like acquiring his space sword, and he uses it a couple times. He ends up throwing it at a platform, and it slices through it almost magically because it's an amazing throw.
My space sword.
And then it just falls, and he's lost it forever. I was like, why did they do that? Rip space sword.
Sokka is...
No, he doesn't. He and Toph's surrounded by 2 firebenders, and he has an injured leg. He used his boomerang to take one of them out, but it wasn't coming back, so he had to use his sword to cut the catwalk, incapacitating the other. This was a last-ditch effort, whether he had to throw away the sword or their lives.
I like that.
So when we're learning about avatars, there's one who's representative of like a fire avatar, and he bursts and controls 4 volcanoes at the same time. And I was just like, why would you show me that and then also show me Roku having incredible trouble in the avatar state trying to deal with one volcano?
The example you're using is the avatar causing eruptions, not stopping one. This is a complete false equivalency. You also negate the fact that Roku was having to deal with an obnoxious amount of toxic volcanic gas that was overwhelming him. You're cutting out all the context to make these 2 different scenarios look the same, but they're not.
How is it that an eclipse prevents firebending when the sun is still there and it still actually is shooting out some level of light, like it's not pitch black, but then nighttime doesn't take their power away?
The moon does get its light from the sun reflecting it, so they still get solar energy that fuels their chi. Obviously still not as strong as is during the daytime, which is pointed out in the show itself.
You rise with the moon. I rise with the sun.
During the eclipse, it blocks enough of the sun where firebenders can't be fueled by the sun's energy. Waterbenders draw strength from the moon, especially at the full moon, but they can still bend at the daytime, and the same thing applies to firebenders at night.
I thought it was really strange that, like, you get these animals are teaching people. It's not that they teach them, like, they give them the ability to bend. It's that everybody is either got the ability or doesn't, like, genetically. And then the animals teach you how to use that, I guess, potency that you have naturally. And of course, the badger moles, I think, do earth. The dragons do fire, and the sky bison do air. And then water's done by the moon. And I was like, what? And this is the idea that the moon's gravity is obviously pulling and controlling the tides, and that people watch that and they learn how to waterbend better. And I was just like, so surely like harsh wind would teach them how to waterbend then too. And the gravity of Earth affects water.
You mentioned that it's through genetics that gives people chi to be able to bend, and while that's partially true, spirituality also plays a part in it. Someone's more spiritual, it does increases their chances of being able to bend. That's why the air nomads were all benders, because they were all very spiritual. Since the northern waterbenders are quite spiritual themselves, it also gives them the ability to learn how to bend as well. And I don't think it's inherently bad for some things to be kept ambiguous for a soft magic system, because if you try to explain everything, you can create explanations that make no sense.
The animals and everything.
Yeah, and the only other thing I was gonna say was the Godzilla thing. I would have thought he'd be like, man, this will be super useful for future battles potentially to save the world, but I guess it's like too risky to do anything with him. Because like, you know, he goes into the water at one point, and I was just like, could you just travel to the Fire Nation and fuck shit up? I don't know. You know what?
There seem to be some contrivances there.
Carry the fish in a bucket and put the special water in there, and make sure you only travel during moonlight or whatever. I don't know. Just...
it might be the fact that they don't.
The only reason the ocean spirit possessed Aang was because the moon spirit was killed, and he was retaliating against Shao and his forces. The only way they could replicate this was by killing the ocean spirit again, which I don't think was set well with the Northern Water Tribe and the ocean spirit, and he would likely kill Aang and his friends. As far as we know, Yue was the only human who was blessed by the moon and ocean spirits, so they wouldn't be able to heal the fish again. It would also be very out of character for Aang to kill the spirit, since he's the Avatar who's supposed to have friendly relations with the spirits, and he also doesn't believe in killing. Well, that'll be it for today. The link to my Twitter and Discord will be in the description, and I'll see you next time.